Welcome back to the channel. What you are about to hear is not another hypothetical war game cooked up in some Pentagon basement. What unfolded in the skies and across the electronic spectrum of the Middle East over the past 72 hours represents a profound rupture in the very foundations of modern precision warfare. Iran has found a way to cripple Israel's precision guidance systems. The smart bombs, those high-tech weapons that were supposed to hit targets with perfect accuracy, are missing their marks. Missions that once took just minutes are now failing or being aborted mid-flight. Israel's legendary offensive edge, the ability to strike fast and decisively, is slipping away. And in Washington, alarm bells are ringing louder than ever. Since the conflict escalated in late February 2026, GPS interference across the Persian Gulf and surrounding regions has exploded. Commercial ships suddenly appeared to sail straight over land or land at airports. Navigation systems went completely haywire. What began as a nightmare for civilian vessels has now directly struck at the heart of military operations. Israel's smart bombs, which rely on precise satellite signals in the final seconds to guide themselves to the target, are losing their way. Instead of destroying key enemy positions, many are falling into empty fields or causing unintended problems. This is not random noise or technical glitches. It is a deliberate electronic campaign, one that costs far less than fighter jets or missiles, yet strikes at the very core of modern warfare. Israel has always depended on superior air power and pinpoint strikes to compensate for its small size and lack of strategic depth. When those precision weapons can no longer be trusted, the entire strategy of quick, decisive victory begins to crumble. Tonight, we're going to break down exactly how Iran is crippling Israel's precision guidance, why smart bombs are missing their targets, what this means for the IDF's offensive power, and why the United States is quietly panicking. If you want clear, honest analysis that mainstream outlets won't give you, hit the like button right now. Subscribe and turn on notifications. Let's dive in, but let's step back for a moment and look at how fast this nightmare unfolded. It all started accelerating in late February 2026, right after the conflict between Israel and Iran entered a dangerous new phase. Within days, reports of strange GPS problems began pouring in from across the Persian Gulf and nearby waters. At first, it seemed like a minor technical issue. Then it became impossible to ignore. Captains on commercial ships watched in disbelief as their navigation screens showed their vessels sailing straight across dry land. Some ships appeared to be docked at airports. Others were shown floating in the middle of the desert. Airliners reported their systems suddenly telling them they were hundreds of miles off course. Cars on coastal highways started giving drivers ridiculous directions, sending them toward the sea instead of the next city. The interference was spreading like wildfire. What began as scattered glitches quickly turned into a massive wave of disruption that blanketed the entire region. Every day, more vessels and aircraft reported the same terrifying problem. Their GPS signals were no longer reliable. Positions jumped randomly. Speeds and directions changed without warning. Entire fleets were forced to switch to old-fashioned paper charts and manual navigation just to stay safe. At first, the world treated it as a serious inconvenience for shipping and civilian aviation. Oil tankers slowed down. Insurance companies raised alarms. Ports delayed departures. But behind closed doors, military planners were already connecting the dots, because these same disrupted skies and waters were exactly where Israeli fighter jets were operating. The precision-guided weapons that Israel had trusted for years suddenly faced the same invisible enemy. Bombs that were designed to correct their path in the last few seconds using satellite signals began behaving strangely. Some veered off target by hundreds of meters. Others simply refused to lock onto their intended coordinates and had to be ditched or brought back. This was no accident. Someone was deliberately flooding the region with false signals and heavy jamming. The attacks were cheap, invisible, and incredibly effective. A single truck-mounted device could confuse satellites over a wide area without firing a single bullet. Iran had clearly prepared for this moment, positioning equipment along its coastline and strategic islands to create a deadly electronic curtain. Day after day, the interference grew stronger and more sophisticated. What started as occasional disruptions became constant and overwhelming. Israeli pilots reported that even their most advanced systems were struggling to tell truth from lies in the electronic battlefield. Israel has always relied on speed and surgical strikes to survive. Its small territory means it cannot afford a long, drawn-out war of attrition. Every mission must count. Every bomb must hit exactly where it is aimed. But now, that unbreakable chain of precision is cracking. The invisible war had begun, and with every missed target, Israel's greatest advantage, its ability to strike hard and fast from the air, was quietly being taken away. So how exactly is Iran managing to cripple Israel's precision guidance systems so effectively? Think of a smart bomb like a very expensive, high-speed delivery drone. Once it is released from the jet, it needs clear, trustworthy directions to reach its target. In the final moments of its flight, it listens carefully to signals from satellites high above the Earth. Those signals tell the bomb exactly where it is and where it needs to go, allowing it to make tiny corrections and strike with terrifying accuracy. Iran has turned that reliable voice in the sky into complete confusion. They are doing two things at once. First, they are jamming the real satellite signals, flooding the air with powerful electronic noise that drowns out the genuine GPS messages, like turning up the volume on a radio so loud that you cannot hear the actual song anymore. Second, and even more dangerous, they are spoofing, broadcasting fake signals that pretend to be coming from the real satellites. These false signals trick the bomb's guidance system into believing it is somewhere completely different from its actual location. Imagine you are following your phone map to a friend's house, but someone secretly changes the map so it shows you driving through a completely different city. You think you are on the right road, but you are actually heading miles away from where you need to be. That is precisely what is happening to Israel's smart bombs right now. Iran has positioned these electronic warfare systems along its coastline, on strategic islands in the Persian Gulf, and even on mobile trucks that can move quickly. The equipment does not need to be huge or expensive. Some devices are small enough to fit on the back of a pickup truck, yet they can create a wide zone of disruption that covers hundreds of kilometers. Because the attacks come from the ground and target the invisible signals in the sky, Israeli jets flying high above often cannot even detect where the interference is coming from. What makes this campaign so effective is its simplicity and low cost. A single fighter jet or cruise missile costs millions of dollars. But these jamming and spoofing systems can be built or acquired for a fraction of that price. Yet they strike directly at the one thing modern precision weapons depend on most: trustworthy location data. When a smart bomb receives these mixed or fake signals, its onboard computer becomes lost. In the last critical seconds, instead of steering toward the intended target, it drifts off course. Some bombs have been reported falling into open desert or empty fields. Others veer sideways by hundreds of meters, missing factories, weapon storage sites, or command centers by a dangerous margin. In several cases, pilots have been forced to abort the mission entirely because they could no longer trust the weapon they had just released. Iran did not invent this tactic overnight. They have spent years studying electronic warfare and improving their capabilities, reportedly with help from advanced technology sourced from partners abroad. The result is a layered defense that creates a kind of invisible shield over key areas. Every time Israeli forces try to launch a precision strike, they run into this electronic wall that turns their most advanced weapons against themselves. The beauty of this approach, from Iran's perspective, is that it is almost impossible to stop completely. You cannot shoot down a radio wave. You cannot easily destroy every hidden transmitter along hundreds of kilometers of coastline. And because the interference affects such a wide area, It creates constant doubt and hesitation in every mission plan. This is why the impact goes far beyond a few missed bombs. It forces Israeli commanders to question every piece of targeting data. Pilots must fly more cautiously. Planners have to consider backup methods that are slower and less accurate. The entire chain of find, fix, and finish that made Israel's Air Force so feared is now being stretched and weakened. Iran has discovered a way to fight a high-tech war with relatively low-tech tools, and it is working. By turning the sky itself into a source of lies, they are slowly blinding the eyes of Israel's precision arsenal. The invisible electronic battle is no longer just affecting ships at sea. It has moved straight into the heart of Israel's offensive strategy. The heart of Israel's offensive strategy is now under direct threat, and the consequences are appearing on the battlefield every single day. When smart bombs start missing their targets, the damage is not just a few craters and empty sand. Entire missions that were carefully planned for weeks are falling apart in real time. Pilots release their weapons expecting a clean, surgical strike on a critical Iranian facility, a missile storage site, a command bunker, or a fuel depot. Instead, the bombs drift off course and explode harmlessly in open desert or farmland. In some cases, they land close enough to cause unintended damage, raising the risk of civilian casualties and international backlash. This is forcing Israeli commanders to make impossible choices. Do they launch the mission anyway and hope the bomb finds its way, or do they abort and bring the aircraft home with weapons still attached? Increasingly, they are choosing the second option. Missions that used to be completed in minutes are now being called off mid-flight. Jets return to base without firing a shot, wasting fuel, time, and exposing themselves to greater danger on the return journey. Israel has built its entire military doctrine around speed and precision. Because the country is small and surrounded by threats, it cannot afford to fight long defensive wars. Its survival depends on taking the fight to the enemy, quickly hitting hard, hitting accurately, and ending the threat before it can grow. Precision-guided munitions were the key to that strategy. They allowed a small air force to punch far above its weight, striking deep into enemy territory with minimal risk to pilots. Now that advantage is eroding without reliable smart bombs. Israeli planners must fall back on older, less accurate methods. Some aircraft are dropping unguided munitions from higher altitudes, which increases the chance of missing the target and hitting the wrong place. Others are forced to fly closer to enemy defenses, to use visual targeting or laser guidance, putting pilots at much higher risk from ground fire and anti-aircraft systems. The ripple effects are spreading through the entire Israeli defense forces. Air crews are flying more cautious routes. Mission packages that once included a handful of jets now require extra support aircraft just to provide backup navigation or electronic protection. This means fewer planes are available for actual strikes, stretching Israel's air power thinner than ever before. Commanders on the ground are also feeling the pressure. Ground forces waiting for air support to clear a path or destroy enemy positions are left waiting longer, when the expected precision strike never arrives. Infantry units must advance into more dangerous situations without the overwhelming firepower they were promised. What was supposed to be a fast, decisive offensive is slowly turning into a more grinding and costly campaign. Even Israel's most advanced aircraft are not immune. The pride of the fleet, the stealth fighters, known for their ability to penetrate deep into hostile airspace, must now operate with reduced confidence in their weapons. Pilots report spending precious seconds double-checking systems and making manual adjustments that should have been handled automatically. Every extra second in hostile airspace increases the danger. This loss of offensive edge is more than a temporary setback. It is forcing Israel to rethink how it fights. Planners are urgently looking for alternative guidance methods, backup systems that do not rely so heavily on satellite signals. But developing, testing, and deploying those new solutions takes time. In the meantime, Every missed target gives Iran breathing room to repair damaged sites, move equipment to safer locations, and strengthen its defenses. The psychological impact is just as damaging. Israeli pilots and commanders who trained for years on the promise of pinpoint accuracy now face constant doubt. Can this bomb be trusted? Will the next strike actually hit where it needs to? That uncertainty slows decision making and drains morale at the exact moment when speed and confidence are most needed. Iran understands this perfectly. By disrupting precision guidance, they have not destroyed Israel's air force. They have simply made it far less effective. A blunt instrument is replacing a surgeon's scalpel. And in modern warfare, especially for a nation with limited strategic depth, losing that surgical ability can change the outcome of an entire conflict. The once feared Israeli offensive machine is losing its sharpest edge. Missions are failing more often. Risks are rising. And the window for quick, decisive victories is closing faster than many in Tel Aviv want to admit. This erosion of Israel's offensive power is not just worrying Tel Aviv, it is sending quiet waves of panic through Washington. American leaders are watching the situation unfold with growing alarm because Israel is far more than a close ally. It serves as America's most advanced testing ground for precision weapons in real combat conditions. The smart bombs and guidance systems now struggling in the skies over the Middle East are the same technologies the United States depends on for its own forces around the world. If these weapons can be so easily thrown off course by a determined adversary using relatively simple tools, then every American military plan that relies on pinpoint strikes suddenly looks vulnerable. The concern runs much deeper than one regional conflict. U.S. forces stationed across the Persian Gulf, in the Mediterranean, and even in the Pacific have been quietly running emergency checks on their own navigation systems. The fear is simple but terrifying. If Iran can create this level of disruption in its backyard, what happens when similar tactics are used against American aircraft carriers, long-range bombers, or ground troops in a future crisis? The same invisible electronic attacks that are forcing Israeli jets to abort missions could one day blind U.S. weapons in a high-stakes confrontation with a major power. Washington is also acutely aware of the economic stakes. The Persian Gulf remains the world's most important energy corridor. When commercial ships lose reliable GPS and are forced to slow down or reroute, global oil prices tumble. Any prolonged disruption in that narrow waterway threatens to send energy costs soaring, hitting American consumers and the broader economy. Pentagon planners are now forced to consider worst-case scenarios, where electronic interference does not just affect weapons, but also cripples the movement of fuel, supplies, and reinforcements. Beyond the immediate battlefield, there is a deeper strategic panic brewing. For decades, the United States has invested heavily in technology that gives it a decisive edge: satellites, stealth aircraft, and precision-guided munitions that allow it to project power anywhere on the planet with minimal risk. That edge was built on the assumption that satellite signals would remain accurate and trustworthy. Now, a single adversary is proving that those signals can be corrupted at relatively low cost. This revelation is forcing senior officials in the Pentagon and the White House to question long-held beliefs about technological superiority. Meetings at Washington have become increasingly urgent. Intelligence briefings highlight how quickly the interference has spread and how difficult it is to fully neutralize. Engineers are working around the clock to develop stronger countermeasures. But creating systems that can resist both jamming and sophisticated spoofing takes months or even years. In the meantime, the U.S. finds itself in an uncomfortable position, quietly supporting Israel while desperately searching for solutions that may not arrive fast enough. The panic is not loud or public. American officials avoid dramatic statements that could escalate tensions further. Instead, the worry shows in closed-door sessions, rushed funding requests for new electronic warfare programs, and private conversations about whether current stockpiles of precision weapons are still as reliable as planners once believed, there is a growing realization that future wars may not be won simply by having better jets or more bombs, but by controlling the invisible battlefield of signals and data. This situation also puts enormous pressure on U.S. policymakers. They must balance support for Israel with the need to avoid being dragged into a wider conflict at a time when American forces are already stretched thin. Every missed Israeli strike increases the chance that the conflict drags on longer, raising the risk that U.S. troops or assets could be drawn in directly. At the same time, the vulnerability exposed in the Gulf serves as a wake-up call for potential flashpoints elsewhere in the world. In short, America is panicking because it is watching its most trusted assumptions about modern warfare crumble in real time. The same precision that gave the U.S. and its allies unmatched dominance is now being challenged by tactics that are cheap, hard to stop, and surprisingly effective. The quiet fear in Washington is that what is happening to Israel today could become the new normal for American forces tomorrow. The electronic shadow spreading across the Middle East is forcing the world's most powerful military to confront an uncomfortable truth. Technology alone may no longer guarantee victory. What we are witnessing right now is more than just another chapter in a regional conflict. It is a warning, a signal that the very nature of modern warfare is changing in ways that many of the world's most powerful militaries were not prepared for decades. Victory in war was defined by who had the most advanced aircraft, the most precise weapons, and the most sophisticated technology. Precision-guided munitions became the symbol of that dominance, the ability to strike anywhere, at any time, with near-perfect accuracy. But what happens when that precision can no longer be trusted? Iran has revealed a critical vulnerability, not by outspending its adversaries, not by building more jets or more bombs, but by targeting the invisible backbone of modern warfare: data, signals, and trust in the systems that guide every strike. When that trust collapses, even the most advanced weapons become uncertain, unreliable, and in some cases, useless. For Israel, this means a painful reassessment of its core military doctrine. Speed and precision have always been its greatest strengths. Now, both are under pressure, and for the United States, the implications are even more profound. If this kind of electronic disruption can spread, then every battlefield where American forces operate could become a zone of uncertainty. The lesson here is simple, but deeply unsettling. The future of war may not be decided by who has the strongest firepower, but by who controls the invisible battlefield. Signals, data, perception. That is where the real war is now being fought. And as this conflict continues to evolve, one question hangs over everything. If precision can be taken away, how does any modern military maintain its edge? If you found this analysis valuable, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next critical update. Because in a world where the rules of war are being rewritten in real time, staying informed is no longer optional. It is essential.